This will be discussing TAP grants. So it's very relevant and important right now that we're thinking about TAP grants because July 15th is the due date for TAP grants. So we'll see that again throughout this presentation as we talk about what they are, what they could be used for, all of that. The TAP call for projects is what I'm basing a lot of this text off of. So I'm not trying to add in my own text. I'm trying to use as much of the MoDOT language as possible, just to keep that straightforward. So, well, let me get rid of my photo here so I could actually click onto the next. Okay, so this is the outline for the presentation. We'll be discussing what is TAP, some of the eligible projects for this type of grant. And then we'll be talking about funding that's available and important dates to keep in mind. And then I'll break down a little bit about the specific call for projects that was released on May 11th. So this is what TAP is. It's federal funding that's available for surface transportation systems, especially related to sidewalks and those kinds of things. It's supposed to expand transportation choices. So it doesn't necessarily focus on transit, things like that, but it will help with especially active transportation kinds of projects. So TAP, a key thing for communities to keep in mind is that projects awarded through the program will only cover 80% of the total cost. So communities will be required to make at least a 20% match for that. So if you have a $500,000 project, the max, then $400,000 will be covered by the community, and then $100,000 will be covered by yourself. The max total for federal reimbursement is $500,000. Most of the projects we've heard are covered in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. So let's talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements here. There are generally 4 different kinds of projects that will be eligible for TAP grants. So we could look at construction of on-road and off-road trail facilities. So trails for pedestrians, bicyclists, others, in compliance with the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. We could look at construction of infrastructure-related projects and systems that will provide safe routes for non-drivers. So those are really important, any kinds of safe routes to destinations. Specifically, one here is the use of abandoned railroad corridors for trails. So this will be huge, especially when considering the Rock Island Trail. That is a project that could qualify in different communities. And we could look at construction of infrastructure related projects to improve the ability of students to walk and bike to school. So those are key as well. So school-specific projects will be an important one, as well as more general projects that will just include other safe routes. So this is something that's really interesting. When the Call of Projects came out this year, they outlined that there's almost 3 times as much funding available over the next 2 years as there has been in previous years. So I included the fiscal year 2021 funding. They had almost $4 million across the state dedicated to TAP funding. Now, each of the next 2 years, they have more than $14.5 million each. So huge amount of opportunity, and it's really crucial that communities try to take advantage of this as much as possible because there's 3 times as much funding. So you'll notice here at the bottom, I have some text. The largest communities or the largest LPAs within the metropolitan planning organizations, which are OTO, which is around Springfield area, MARC, which is around Kansas City, and East-West Gateway, which is around St. Louis. They manage TAP programs separately. So That's something to keep in mind if you're within any of those districts. But otherwise, the funding that's available will be taken through these different funding pools managed by each MoDOT district. So here are the important dates to keep in mind. May 11th, as I mentioned, that's when the TAP call for projects was released. And another crucial one, like the deadline itself is July 15th. But if any project is on a MoDOT right-of-way, so if it's a MoDOT road, the project will maybe add sidewalks to something like that. June 30th is the key to get all of your materials into the area engineer for MoDOT for them to review. They'll need to sign off and endorse the project for it to be accepted if it's on a MoDOT road. So July 15th, that's the deadline for projects you send to your district. So if you're in the MoDOT Southwest district, you send to their district staff. And then they'll be reviewing from the 16th until September 16th. That's when they'll send any ineligibility letters, things like that. And we could expect around September 30th for the projects to be awarded. So this is what the TAP call for projects looks like. After my presentation, I'll put in a link for how to access this. But these are the things that you'll find. There are 4 documents that they'll provide on the website in addition to the other general information. So they'll have the TAP guide. That's really the key document that has the most information for understanding more about the project, every possible detail. And then they provide a frequently asked questions based off the guide for some of the most crucial things that you'll need to keep in mind. Additionally, they'll have the application form and the evaluation form. So any questions, you're able to contact your district representative in one of the 7 MoDOT districts, or you could reach out to Laura Ellen, and her information is right here. So this is just a little bit of information about the application itself. There are 26 questions with some subcategories. I think it's about 6 pages. Of course, you'll add in additional text, you'll have supporting documents, but mainly it wants to know about the basic information about the project, who the sponsor is. There's a person, like a full-time community member, either an elected official or a city staff that is designated as the sponsor for the project. The project description, I'll get into a little more detail in just a second. That is the most heavily weighed portion of the TAP grant. So I think that's about out of 100 points for the evaluation, about 25 of those there. Then there's implementation and budget, things like that. So the description, it's really looking for clarity, safety, proximity to an activity center or an everyday destination, and connectivity. So, and this is what the evaluation looks like. You could see how point values are given, and based on the amount of point values available, this determines whether your project makes it or not. And lastly, I'll conclude, these are some past project examples. So these are in 2020, the TAP award announcement gave, especially for sidewalks project, improvements on old sidewalks, historic downtown focus, pedestrian projects along larger roadways, those kinds of things, greenways. So these are some examples. You could look through any of these. I think the thing I would recommend, if you have any connection to any other community that has awarded a TAP application in the past few years, I would definitely recommend just reaching out to them, seeing what specific questions you have about the process. Otherwise, contact your MoDOT district representative or Laura, who I included the email. So do you all have any questions for me? And I will conclude the presentation.